My name is Matthew Kemps. I am the co-founder of Lone Wolf Realty Group at Spyglass Realty, and this is
Matt Kirschling with Gold Star Mortgage.
two Matts, one market. All right, all right, Matt. What do you want to dive into today?
Well, a lot of recession talk lately.
Okay.
And one of the things that I was listening to yesterday, I have a lot of websites and articles and everything that I read. And, a lot of it's super analytical. And without going over it with word for word, really a lot of it is all about tracking unemployment. And so typically what we see, because recession is a word that has been chatted about for, gosh, I feel like we've been talking about recession scares for a little over a year now. And so, it's when you have 3/4 of, reduced GDP. And one of the indicators of it is unemployment. So, a lot of these things that I see from these analysts and everything along those lines, it's always important to track past history. It can help you, but it doesn't necessarily give you a guarantee into the future.
Mm-hmm.
So we've seen the unemployment rate rise 0.5% from its low. It was low. Its lowest recently was at 3.4% in April. So it's gone up to 3.9%. So we're basically going to go ahead and call that about a 0.5% rise. And when we look back historically on when we can kind of pinpoint recessions all the way back since 1970, so, for the last 50 years, when we see that 0.5% raise more, from the lowest point in any given timeline, typically we see a recession get announced or occur within a month or two, 30 to 60 days. So, we had unemployment come out last week. We finally have seen that rise. And so, again, no one knows. No one has a crystal ball. Frankly, there are situations, and I think a lot of people would argue this, is that we could maybe even look back and say we're in a recession now, because that was part of the chart that I was looking at. Was some of them were like, okay, once we had that 0.5, when, a couple months went by, they look back in the rear view. Some of the charts showed -1, where you're like, well, what's a -1? It's like, well, when that happened already, it was already a recession, and we could look back on it and see it. So, one of the things that everybody asks me, because those of us that are old enough to experience 2008, which I sadly am, they're like, well, how bad do you think it's going to be? What do you think it's going to be like? And I think the one thing we all forget about is recession is an organic thing that is inevitable. There is no forever staving off a recession. And I think that in comparison to 2008, which is what everybody's fear is, because, generationally, it seems to be one that a lot of people can remember. I don't know too many people that are around from the Great Depression. So, I think that the one thing we have to remember is that when we had the 2008 recession, it was really more of a housing market crash that started the recession, not the other way around. And we've already done a bunch of things on this podcast to kind of show how even not if, but when the recession is announced, watching home prices, go down is it's highly unlikely to happen, because we're just not dealing in the same space as we were in 2008. But here's the good news, right? If we find ourselves in a position, which, again, according to, data that we've been monitoring for 50 years, if we do see ourselves in a recession, what typically ends up happening is mortgage rate wise, we usually see a pretty significant drop. And by significant, I don't want anyone to think we're going back to the 2 and 3% range. In fact, another fun fact, usually from the highest point of the market, we usually will pick up anywhere between 1.5 to all the way to 2%, which would be fantastic, but I wouldn't count on it. So we kind of saw interest rates get to 8%. So with the announcement of a recession and interest rates reducing, it wouldn't be unrealistic to see interest rates drop into, the mid-6, even high 5% range, where, the guy who's got the 800 credit score and putting down 20% or more, maybe he's going to get that 599. But as we've talked about before, the moment that happens, you're going to see property values increase, and there's always going to be that seesaw effect between low rates and property values going up. And when I talk about reduction of interest rates, I don't mean like overnight. These things typically take months, and we'll see a downward trajectory in interest rates, which recessions aren't fun. People lose their jobs, savings gets depleted. But if you were waiting for those lower interest rates, this is one way to attain it. So, yeah.
Okay. I can add on to that where we are seeing inventory actually increase a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
We have, based off our conversations and what I've seen from pre-approvals, rates have dropped a little bit already.
Yep.
We're seeing a little more activity, even though we're in November. We actually had more contracts go under. We had more properties go under contract this week for the team than we did all of September.
Wow.
And then we're in November.
What do you think that is?
End of year for tax savings.
That's what I think too. It's like people that want to just get it done for this year, get the write-offs. They were going to buy anyway.
It perfect.
Right. Do you feel like it's also just with buyers, maybe like a bucket list thing? Like we have to buy. We said we're going to do it. Like
I got a lot of weird scenarios right now too, and on both the buyer side, weird scenarios, and also a lot of desperate sellers right now.
Okay.
So it's they're feeling the hit, and it's we need to do something about our current scenario, and we know that our number one asset can potentially take us out of this.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing a lot of that, and then seeing a lot of like weird, just like scenarios where like, okay, I'm working on one right now where the employer is going to be purchasing a home for his employee to live in.
Okay.
And the communication sucks.
Right.
But and I have to be as patient as possible because I'm like not trying to. And the guys we're about to be most likely in a recession, or maybe we already are.
Right.
I'm not trying to go like bug his boss where he could potentially lose his job.
Sure.
And I'm not trying to blow him up over it. So it's like I'm not doing my normal follow up on it. I'm like letting them call me, trust that they're going to reach out to me and go through the process and just update them on what's going on. Like for example, like we've been sitting on a home for about 3 weeks. That home went under contract last night, and they wanted to make an offer 2 weeks ago. And I was just sitting here waiting for a text. Hey, write the offer up. I'm ready to go. And offer was already ready to go and send to them. I already prepared for it. And I guess got nothing. It was crickets. So then I got a text yesterday. Hey, I saw your text yesterday that the house is gone. Is that true? I'm like, yeah, it's gone. So this is kind of just like public service announcement. Do not wait. If you want to buy a house, pull trigger, buy the house. You have an option period if something happens.
I'm seeing a lot of people to your point that are buying right now that don't seem to be as like motivated to do the things they need to do, and I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that they're like, well, if it I'm seeing a lot of if it happens, it happens.
If you stumble into it, great. If it doesn't work, I'm gonna I'll back out.
Right. Yeah.
Which is why title companies are seeing a lot of contracts be canceled during option period now. Like the cancellation rate, I think last I talked to title was up like 15%.
That's a good statistic. So cancellation rate on contracts that are in option is up 15%.
Don't quote it on it. Rough number.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, but I mean I wouldn't say that's crazy, but that's you'll feel that.
That's significant, especially for an agent. Let's just say it's a buyer's agent who's running around town, hasn't had a contract in a month or two, and she's like, "Oh, we got under contract. All right, option period. We got a 7 or 10 day option. We're on day 5 or 6. Inspection report comes back a day before. She says, "Oh, it's not great."
Yeah, I mean, what do you think that the average percentage is of in what would be considered more of an aggressive market that people were getting out during option?
So little. Well, it didn't matter because they had backup contracts.
Right. But I guess what I'm saying is as a buyer's agent, if you're running a buyer and you write an offer on a property, what's the percentage chance that buyer was going to back out during option? Probably low.
When?
I mean, 2020, 2020, 2021.
2021, very rare because they knew if they won the property, they're like, "Oh, we got it."
Right. So like maybe 10, 15% chance.
Exactly.
And so, I mean, if things are up another 15%, as a buyer's agent, you get a client under contract. Is it safe to say you're probably looking at like a 30%? I mean, we'll just call it 33. Like there's a 1/3 chance.
Yeah, like getting past option is huge for a buyer's agent. Not that you're saying I'm not going to be your fiduciary and walk you through the process. and do everything I can to make sure you're protected. And if backing up a contract makes sense, I'm going to tell you it makes sense. And I got to take that hit and we'll start back from the beginning. But in the scenario where it pops up, where let's say it's inspection report's pretty clean, and then the buyer just comes to me like, it's not the one.
Just not
Then
feeling it.
I'm just like,
Right. So, we're approaching the end of the year, and before we got on this, we talked about this. I mean, organically, this is a little bit of a slower time of the year, but we're kind of seeing things
I'm more
not
busy.
slow.
I'm
right?
more busy right now than I was this summer.
So you had the pleasure of going to a real big real estate networking event last night.
Oh yeah,
and had an opportunity to talk with a bunch of, would you call these investors or these real estate agents? I mean, who's at this real estate event?
I didn't think you were going to bring this up. Okay, just to know everyone what he's talking about. There's a company by the name of Sub2. Pace Morby runs this.
Mm-hmm.
Pace Morby was in Austin, Texas last night. If you don't know who Pace Morby is,
he's the Messiah of real estate.
Oh my God.
The second coming of Christ. Of real estate.
Sorry, there's just so many jokes we have in the background off this podcast that it's just like absurd when I hear him say this crap.
So people were so excited that he was supposedly going to be at this place. Where was this?
It was at Pecan Springs Ranch, whatever you want to call it. Like Oak Hill area.
How many people showed up to see the Messiah?
There were probably about 100, 150 people there.
Crazy.
Okay, so what this is, it's a platform for investors to basically buy properties where a buyer is or a seller is in distress, basically, and they take over the payments for the loan, and then the deed is transferred to the new buyer, but the original seller still has the note in their name, but you're making the payments to the service.
The debt.
Yeah, and what we're talking about here, and where he's like, there was a meetup and everything. To answer your question, it was probably 80% investors.
Okay.
2% agents.
Mm-hmm.
I just made this math so hard. 18% subject to students.
Got it.
Or wannabe students.
I got it. I thought there'd be more.
No, there weren't as many. Like, it's not like that.
Was there anybody there that you think would have like gotten dizzy and passed out had he actually shown up?
85% of the people there.
This guy's a god.
And after you and I just talk, I'm just kind of sitting there in the background, like geeking out, like watching this. And like there's this kid I just met. He's like, I don't know, like 22, 23, just got out of college. He goes, I'm just gonna dive right into real estate investing. I'm like, okay, you don't have a dollar to your name probably, but
okay. You don't have to, Matt. You don't have to have any money.
Okay, we'll move on from that. Kind of when you say it, makes it sound ridiculous. But
it is kind of ridiculous. It's kind of fucking ridiculous.
Okay.
Anyway, yeah.
Doesn't have he's like fresh out of college. He looks at me. He goes, "Man, I was really looking over to see Pace today." I'm like, "What do you think? You were like talk to him and ask him questions or something?" No, I just want to see the guy. I'm like, "What?
Well, you want to just size him up, see if you can fist fight him or something?
Like,
Could I take him in a street fight?
Like I wanted to I was totally going just like to learn more about the contract process or the contractual process through subject twos and wraps and seller financing. Like I can go to my attorney and talk to that stuff, but I'm going to be paying him $200 an hour, or $250 an hour, and it's like if I can just go to something and like listen to it and absorb the knowledge, I'm gonna do that. But there was like I was like the only person there, I think, besides who I brought with me from the team, that was there to absorb the knowledge. Everyone else was kind of there just like fangirl and like I'm like what?
So why do you think that is? I mean, that's what I wanted to talk more about with this. I'll Pace has got enough footage on his podcast and everything. He can speak for himself. If you're interested, go ahead and check out what he's doing. But what do you think the like allure is for this like real estate messiah that people just, like you said, want to meet him and want to see him? And
because he invented Sub2. He did not invent Sub2.
Right, I know. You told me there was a guy that's like, I've been doing this for 60 years. Like this isn't new, but he packages it very nicely.
He does package it well.
Yeah, and so for me, it's just very, very interesting. Like we have these, and this is like, again, because people have seen me on my podcast use my air quotes with investors, right? You have these people who are investors.
Every single one of them was that.
Right. That's what I mean. Like there are actual investors out there. I don't want to take anything away from the people who are actually doing it, but there's a lot of investors that, they know a whole bunch of stuff about houses and they buy maybe like maybe one house a year, maybe. And there's just this like, I don't know even what to call it. They're so proud that someone else is like all right, here's my analogy. Early on in my career, I was kind of like managing other loan officers and stuff like that. And I lived up in Cleveland, and when Cleveland was in the oh my God, what is it in the NBA? Is it the national championship? What do they call that?
National basketball
Finals. Like,
oh yeah, okay, yeah.
right. So Cleveland's in the finals, and it's a 7-game series that goes 7 games. And like every time there was a game, I mean, the game was on at 7. People had to leave work at like 3, and they would come in, they'd be hungover the next day. And then the next day there's a game. And it was like, we lost like 10 days in Cleveland. And I don't mean just my company, like Cleveland in general, just like shut down for like 10 days. And sports is one of those things where it's like, LeBron James doesn't pay my bills.
Yeah.
Right.
And like he costs you.
And right. And like LeBron and the Cavs, like winning the finals, it was fantastic and fun to watch. But like, that doesn't do anything for me.
Unless you put a lot of money on it.
Right. Unless you're betting on it. And so there's just something about these like superheroes that we have and how people just attach themselves. And so here you've got this guy who's doing all this like sub-2 real estate investing. And like, I told you this, like I had a buddy of mine who's not even in real estate who reached out to me and was like, hey, I'm going to this networking event. This guy Pace Morby's going to be there. And I'm like, how the fuck do you know about this? Like, it wasn't like you calling me or like another real estate agent or one of my guys that says he's an investor. This was like just random individual that I know through networking who is a stress and anxiety coach. And he's like, Pace Morby's going to be here. I'm like,
so we should be laughing, but
how do we? Well, and again, I'm just thinking of the social science behind it. This really isn't real estate related.
I kind of got it.
Okay.
So it's personality types.
Okay.
So you're gonna have your leaders. You're gonna have your wannabe leaders, but don't know how to lead.
Mm-hmm.
Then you're gonna have your followers.
Mm-hmm.
And then the followers obtain the knowledge from the leader, and just how our social workflow kind of works.
Okay.
Pace is a great leader.
Yeah.
Pace is great in front of people. He speaks really well. I'll give him props on that. Every time I've watched him speak,
He gets you jazzed up.
oh, I'm just ready to just do some subject twos.
Right.
Okay. So to the point where it's like he is a little. I'll say this: he's motivating in a point, but we'll go back to our point. Like if you're gonna be a shark, be a shark.
Right. If you're gonna shark people's houses, like just
like,
be honest with yourself.
I don't mean Pace. If you watch this, man, I totally apologize. But like my entire real estate team is built off the book Go Giver. Your company is built apparently off the book Go Giver. You're stealing people's houses, basically. I was like, dude,
and leaving them with the debt.
Yeah, I struggle with that portion.
Well, I mean,
we can talk about this, Pace. If you ever want to reach out to me and you want to talk about this, I would love to talk about this with you.
Well, if everything goes right, no harm, no foul.
Yeah, but you no longer have the deed to your house, and you have the massive risk associated with it. Like I'm gonna probably shoot myself in the foot when I say this, but I'm never gonna suggest to a seller to do subject to as a primary option.
Like when you drew the picture and there's a big arrow and it says a promise, like a promise. I promise to pay this.
The best part was was the wholesaler in the corner. It said sneaky.
Right. All right, we have to move on.
Okay.
We have to move on, but it's very interesting to me, not just about Pace, but just people that we as a society look up to. I mean, you could say this about the Kardashians. There's people that feel that way, and it's like I just used the example of LeBron James with thank you, LeBron, for bringing us a championship. Right, exactly. Like I loved it, but at the same time, I made it to work every day. Like I wasn't, it wasn't like I have to basically take the next 10 days off because I'm either going to be hungover or preparing to go to the Cavs.
Yeah.
So all very interesting stuff. So moving on, I'm trying to think. Do you want to do a call to action here?
Sure. Again, my name is Matthew Kemps with Lone Wolf Realty Group at Spyglass Realty. If you are looking to get creative financing rolling, if you're looking to get pre-approved through Matthew Kirschling, if you're looking to purchase, sell, invest, whatever it might be, please feel free to reach out to us. Our numbers, our emails, and everything else are going to be down below or in the description. Our calendar links are down below as well. Feel free to click on that, dedicate some time just for yourself, or we can set aside our time to go over a perfect scenario of what would be best for you. And Matt, I'll give it over to you.
Yeah, Matt Kirschling with Gold Star Mortgage. I'm going to hang on the thing that I've been talking about for the last week. We have this event coming up in January on January 9th at Goosehead's facility there off of Breaker Lane, and I'll get more information on it. But, bringing agents in that are looking for ways to get better at selling, converting leads, dealing with the stuff that we've talked about with buyer's agreements and everything along those lines, just honing in our sales skills instead of trying to get creative, really just doing the work.
Yep, absolutely. Let's jump into that topic, actually.
Sure.
Let's jump into the buyer agent scenario of what's going on with NAR. Because I've had a few conversations with agents in the last few weeks, and I'm not going to call you guys out, but I'm going to talk about what I see based off what you're telling me.
A lot of speculation, for sure.
Buyers agents are freaking out after I tell them what I think is going to happen. And they're terrified. Like, when I have the conversation, I get excited about negotiations. Like, that's like why I'm in this business.
Saves time.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. People are scared of having those conversations. I don't know if it's because you're scared of people saying no, or you're getting rejected, or why you're scared of it. But that's like the thrill portion for me in this business is negotiation, sales funnel, and that's why I'm in this business. And I like to, overall, I like to help people.
I think I know why there are certain agents out there that are scared, because I've told you in the past, I've been, kind of pushing these buyer's agreements for almost 7 years now. And I would say it goes one of three ways. Either agents look at me like, why would we do that? Like, it's a waste of time, which that's been taken off the table. Then there's the other agent that's like, okay, this sounds interesting, or they do it. And then there's the last agent, and this is the one I think you're running into that's terrified. I think that real estate agents individually and a lot of brokerages have packaged real estate in a way that you're not selling anything. You are educating.
So false, by the way.
You're educating. You are leading with, you just want to help people. You want to help people. You want to educate. And ultimately that like the homes sell themselves. And as a buyer's agent, because you don't necessarily negotiate your commission, there's kind of some truth to that, right? Those are the agents that good agents kind of typically tend to tease and say, you're the reason why people think that all that we do is just open doors. Because my whole thing is like, if you can't negotiate your commission, or at least even like show value to your buyer as to why you're being compensated, how are you going to negotiate their price with when they're looking to make an offer? And then the other thing, it's like ghosting, right? You hear these horror stories, you see the memes online about people ghosting buyer's agents. Think about it. Like, I showed this guy like 4 or 5 properties, and then he went and bought with his cousin. Like, how much time did that waste? Where if you would have just had what you would consider to be somewhat of a hard conversation, like, hey, I want to sit you down. We got to talk. This is serious. Let me explain some things. And at the end of this, I'm going to ask you to do business with me. Right?
And if you don't want to do business with me, I understand.
Right, exactly. Like, my sales line has always been like, I love to hear yes, and I can absolutely handle no, but I cannot stand maybe.
And learning to hear no more than anything else is going to be the biggest factor of you in sales.
So what are these agents outside of like, is it just maybe that it's shaking up their paradigm of what they thought their job actually was?
So I'm going to give you an example.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be calling people out because they don't even know who they are, but whatever.
Well, if the shoe fits.
Yeah. All right. There's a certain someone I know that is working directly through a sort of what's the one we use? It's basically agents working directly through a source of leads that's coming through, and his or her primary job is not a real estate agent. Okay,
gotcha.
But he's getting these. He or she. We already know it's he. Whatever. Fuck it. We already. It's basically getting these leads on a silver platter. And the way that they're coming through, I disagree with the ethics around it.
Okay.
And we can have this conversation offline if you want, if you know who you are. I disagree with the way 100% of how it's being handled. The streamlined process of how that scenario should be working is it should be worked organically. But this guy, since he works for a certain company, is jumping in the middle of it because he's a part of this company. He adds what he calls an added service and is able to walk them through properties throughout those areas.
Okay. But he's not licensed.
He is licensed.
Okay.
But he's not a realtor, in my opinion.
I gotcha.
He's a realtor. But
Right. He's licensed agent, but he's not. Yeah.
He's getting these multi-million-dollar deals handed him on a platter, but because he knows a certain area because of his job.
Okay.
Goes directly to him, cuts off the people like myself that could come in there who are actual professionals.
Right.
And that same guy calls me for advice.
Yeah, I gotcha. Interesting.
And I had that conversation with that guy and told him what's going to most likely happen from the NAR lawsuit, what we can expect for, how to plan for it, and everything else. And he goes, looks like I lost my job in this scenario. I'm like, that's how you look at this?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
You know what I think is also going to be kind of interesting is like, correct me if I'm wrong on this because I am not a real estate agent, but right now, if you're not getting exclusive buyers agreements signed up front, you're basically running buyers without any sort of like documentation being signed, right?
Correct.
So there's no even moment because like what I envision, and this is just, it sucks that I have to say this, but I just know human nature in general, and this isn't directed at anybody, but let's face it, when these exclusive buyers agreements come out, agents are going to be getting them signed, and not all agents, but there will be agents out there that will be getting them signed without explaining anything.
Mm-hmm.
Like, all you got to do is sign here, and I can show you houses. And then people are going to be like, well, what am I actually signing? Like, oh, just, this is what it's going to take to get you into this house.
Yep.
Even that isn't a thing right now. So, like, as a buyer's agent, you really aren't getting any kind of signatures from any of your buyer until they're writing an offer on the property.
Exactly. You kind of just sneak that form into it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I think even just...
Which is basically not a disclosure.
Mm-hmm.
You're putting the document in there, but you need to have that conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I guess what I'm getting at is like, I can see how that is going to be a little bit of a change for agents when they're like, man, I really need to like on the front end have a conversation with my buyer and either become very informative and have a serious conversation that could spook a buyer.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, let's face it. Like,
I'm going to give you, just from that standpoint, Dave, not to interrupt.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
If you spook the buyer and you're having that conversation, you were screwed regardless.
I agree.
You weren't going to be working with them. You're saving yourself the hours of time that you were going to be working with them to go to your pipeline and find other opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, again, I always relate it to my business. I mean, we can't even order an appraisal or anything along those lines without getting like a gigantic stack of disclosures over to the client. And to your point, like I have found that, we even talk about it with credit pulls, right? Like a metric that we've used in my business since the beginning of time is like, how many credit pulls did you have this week? And the reason that it's important is because it's pretty astonishing the amount of people that will call. They want a bunch of answers to a bunch of questions, and then when you're like, "Hey, let's run this down. Let's look at your situation." We can even offer to do a soft credit pull, so it's not negatively affecting their credit and everything along those lines. And right then and there is usually that point where it's like, "Whoa, I don't want my credit pulled." And I'm here to tell you, real estate agents, like I can assure you, it's going to be almost the same. Where that client that doesn't want their credit pulled, it's not like I call them in 30 days or 45 days and like they went with another company. Like they're literally either not there or they're just not serious.
Yep.
And so I think you're going to find that and I think from a mental standpoint, because one of the things I like that you and I do is we get like real sales related and we talk about sales strategies and tactics and things like that. I think there's something that hurts people's business I know there is something that hurts salespeople's business when they feel like they have something working that is not in the real world.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, oh yeah, I'm running like 4 or 5 buyers, and it's like, how many of these buyers are legit, and how many of them are just like running you around? And I'm here to tell you, I think that you're gonna be happy when you're like having those tough conversations, because if you don't think you're running 5 buyers, it might encourage you to go out and generate more new business instead of saying, nah, I'm good. I got 5 buyers right now that I'm running, and like they'll come. It'll happen. It'll happen. I think it might be hurting you
100%.
that you're not having these conversations up front.
And not to turn this into an agent sales platform at all, but more of a public service announcement to agents. If you aren't putting your buyer rep in front of them, I know we're scared to do it on internet leads because there's not trust established and you don't really have anywhere to lean on them because there's probably 13 other agents involved. I can kind of tell you how I go about it. So your referral-based clientele, you're having a buyer consultation with them up front. You walk them through your entire process, and you have the buyer rep signed at the end after you build trust and rapport with them, because now they understand who you are. You tell them about yourself, tell them about the process, tell them about their search, talk about where we're looking, talk about different areas. And at the end, once they're like, oh, this guy knows what the fuck he's talking about,
Yeah.
then it's like, okay, I'm happy to proceed with you. So that's how you do a buyer consultation in 30 seconds with an internet lead that comes through. You can, depends on how you feel about safety and security, about internet leads, however you want to handle it. I'm going to just talk on the Zillow lead standpoint because there's so many different types of internet leads. Zillow lead comes through. They want to see 123 Main Street. You say, Kurt, sounds great. We want to set the appointment up for 4 o'clock. You said, absolutely. I'll get the appointment scheduled for you at 4 o'clock. I'll see you there. Are there any other questions you have about this certain area? And what's motivating you to move to these areas? Once you get those 2 questions answered, you're going to learn a lot about them before you even get to the property. Their motivation, as soon as you ask them what's motivated them to move this area, they're going to be like, oh, why does he give a shit?
Right.
They don't know that you're trying to be their agent quite yet. They just think you're going to open the door for them on that first call. Then once you establish that kind of relationship, you understand that they've already opened up a little bit with you. You get to the first appointment with them. You start asking them questions about so I understand you're moving here for a job relocation. Do you know anyone here in the Austin area? Oh, you don't? Okay, well, I would be more than happy to introduce you to X, Y, and Z. Hey, have you checked out this restaurant? You should really go try this place out. Then that portion, your first portion of your conversation with them in that first home, that you're not selling them that first home. I'm letting you know 5% of internet leads, the first home they were going to buy it, 5%. So you have 95% of the other homes that you're going to be showing them additional properties. At the end of that first showing, after you've built that rapport in that home, and that's your number one goal in that showing, is you have your IABS, your buyer rep, a consumer protection notice, or whatever it is, documents that your brokerage requires. You say, hey, real quick, can we just step here in the kitchen real quick? I want to walk you through these things real quick before we see additional homes. I want to teach you and educate you on what a sales agent is, what a broker is, walk them through the IABS. Say, FYI, obviously, I don't work for free. You wouldn't expect me to work for free. You're either on a salary job or what it might be. I work purely off commission, and I dedicate my time just to you and walk you through. I got a family. I got everything else. I got to feed them. So here's what my fee is. And you can go whatever your retainer, for 3%, your 2%. Have these conversations now so you can prepare yourself for what might be in the future of what NAR is basically announcing. And you're gonna feel like once the time does come where sellers, if they don't or if they aren't paying commissions and you have to negotiate them, like, shit, I've already done this stuff. Like, all I gotta do is prove, like, they need to understand my worth through the process. I need to build my trust with them on the first initial portion of conversation, and then we move forward from there. And they're gonna be like, all right, we can do this. I'm willing to pay you, or I understand you're my agent.
Yeah, and I think one of the other things that I've kind of coached as far as the sales side of things to real estate agents on getting these things signed is I think that I think that anybody would understand that you as a real estate agent have other exclusive buyers agreements signed.
Yep.
So for a new client to say, hey, I'm asking you to sign this, and if you don't, it is legitimately unfair to all of the clients who have committed to do business with me that I would run you, take time away from them to work for you when you're not willing to be one of the people who's committed to me.
Part of my community.
Right. Part of my tribe, right? But I think the one question that everybody would always ask, and I mean, I think every agent is different. Hypothetically, Matt, if we sign this buyer's agreement with you and a couple days or weeks or months go by and I'm like, you know what, I'm just not feeling it. If I call you and say, look, thanks for helping me out, but like, I don't think I want to work with you anymore. Am I stuck with you?
Absolutely not.
Right.
If you don't work with me, I don't really want to work with you. It's not really comfortable for me to work with you. If you do,
but I have to at the very least, call you.
100%.
I can't ghost you now.
If you ghost my ass, I'm blowing your phone up, and you're gonna hate me even more.
Right, and I'm gonna show you, hey, if you close with another agent, we've got procuring clause, and I might be able to steal their commissions.
Exactly.
And so, yeah, it's just that last right of refusal type thing. Like, hey, you're not gonna get ghosted as a buyer's agent now because that buyer, you'll let them go, but they've at least got a call.
My number one thing in this industry, and if you're purchasing a home, you're selling a home, whatever it is, communication.
Yeah, of course.
You got to communicate with me.
Yep. Well, and of course, I get it. A lot of these buyers, they don't like having those, what they consider to be difficult conversations and everything. But that's what we do as salespeople. We coach, we educate, and, we've got to make people feel more comfortable and confident, especially during times of uncertainty. And for home buying for a lot of people is an uncertain time.
Completely.
So, you got anything you want to cover? Are we doing the Wolf's Kitchen today, or is that?
No, we already got on this week.
All right. Well, with that being said, I guess we'll wrap it up,
We got
man.
questions. We can do some real would you rather's.
I have none of them.
All right, well, let's wrap this one up then.
Yeah, I apologize. I was a
Okay,
little
we'll-
unprepared today.
We'll get a short episode in this one. Again, my name is Matthew Kemps. I'm with Lone Wolf Realty Group at Spyglass Realty. If you're looking to get creative on your finance, if you're looking at pre-approved with Matt, if you're looking to buy, sell, invest in the Austin, Texas area, please feel free to reach out to us. I'd love to dedicate some time with you. Calendar link is down below in the description. Phone number is going to pop up here. And then Matt, I'll turn it
Yeah,
over to you.
Matt Kirschling with Gold Star Mortgage. Please reach out to me. Some of the things that we've talked about, mainly agents, man. Again, I am not a real estate agent, but I go out of my way to know about your business and know what you're up against because your success ultimately breeds mine. So I love having those conversations, sitting down, just sales tactics, everything along those lines. And then your average home buyer right now, we talked about creative financing. Hit me up. I'd love to explain some of it to you, let you know how it works and figure out if it's a right fit for you or maybe going through traditional financing makes more sense. I loved geeking out over this stuff.
Yeah.
Let's just say that.
Perfect. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thank you.